All right, week 2 of your Red Door CSA. Apologize for this video being late. I did it the first time and I made it far too long, so I'm going to regulate myself this time. First thing I'm going to do is I take a damp cloth and I put it underneath my cutting board because this keeps my cutting board from moving when I'm chopping. Next thing, let's dive right into your head of romaine. Last week I showed you with the lettuce that you can take and cut slits down one side, another side, and then chop it down from the top, keeping the base intact so it stays together when you're cutting it. So again, if you want to make a salad or you want to chop it up and put it in a slaw, I recommend doing that, salad spinning it, and then putting it into a plastic bag again with a paper towel underneath. However, for me, I'm going to eat this in BLTs and other sandwiches. So I'm going to keep it whole, which also makes it not brown as quickly. If you chop it, it is more likely to brown. So for me today, I'm leaving this whole and gently folding the top together and putting it into a bag, top first, with that root end out of the bottom. And then I would just place this into my refrigerator. Something else that we covered last week with the herbs, this week we have dill, last week was cilantro. Dill is really good for drying, it retains its flavor very well, where like cilantro, if you dry cilantro, it does not retain its flavor. So dill is a really nice herb to have around, it's great in dressings. Tenzin made a delicious dilly carrot recipe, so I recommend the recipe is in the email if that's something you want to do. Again, if you are going to store it and not use it right away, I would take a damp cloth, wrap it around the bottom, and again, place it into a bag. However, for me this week, I am going to use this right away when I go home to make dilly carrots. So when I chop it up, I often leave the rubber band on just to keep it together. It just makes it easier for me in terms of chopping purposes. And I'm going to chop it finer because I would like this flavor to spread as far as possible. Down the line. And once you do chop it, you should use it right away. You can put it in a bag and store it for a little while, but the dill will store longer if you leave it with the paper towel on the end and whole in a bag in your refrigerator. But if you tend to use it soon, go ahead and chop that up, and soon is probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 days that it'll hold chopped. Okay, so chop that up. I'm going to put this in a bag and to the side because a little bit later I'll be making dilly carrots. Okay. This week, everybody, large and small shares, got zucchinis. So again, I went over last week, I cut them into half moons. Again, I'm going to store one of my zucchinis, crisper drawer in the fridge. It does not need to be in a bag. The second one, I'm going to chop up differently this time. If you have a mandolin or a thin slicer, that probably works sometimes better than a knife to get a consistent thin round, but I'm going to cut mine into thin rounds because I want to make this recipe for a tart. So again, I'd remove both ends and then just hold it in place. And again, like I said, if you are comfortable or have a mandolin, that might be your best option for a good thin slice. But I'm going to take this all the way down. And if you want the recipe nice and thin, it's an Ina Garten tart, and it is absolutely delicious. So I will finish chopping these rounds later. And again, if I chop these up into half moons or into rounds or some way that I want to use it for a roast or in a soup, it won't hold as long as it does whole, but you can put it again in a bag or an airtight container and store it in your refrigerator until you are ready to use it. Let's see. This week, large shares got salad turnips. Also delicious in slaws, in salads. I would cut the greens off because the greens are going to suck the juice from the turnips and you want your turnips to stay firm and tasty. The greens are edible, so again, I'm going to cut my greens off and wrap a paper towel around them. In fact, this morning for breakfast, I did have turnip greens and beet greens with my eggs. So again, paper towel around the end, into a bag till I'm ready to use. And get the bag open. Great. And then these are going into the fridge. So pretty simple. Again, if you're not into the tops of like your turnips or something like that, that's all right, but they definitely are edible and they are good. Okay, for these guys, I would keep them whole if you're gonna store them for a while. So I'm gonna put my salad turnips into a bag. They're good just with dips. I put mine into a slaw that I made the other day. I also put them in that strawberry salad that I think Tenzin refers to with the romaine, and lots of things in your box can go into a salad and be delicious. So I'm gonna stick them in a bag for now and store them for later. All right, you got scallions or green onions. Some got purple, some got white. Either way, they are delicious. The tops are going to be a little bit more potent onion flavor than the tips. I should say the roots, the bases are going to have more potent flavor than the tops. You can eat the whole thing. They're great if you want to keep them whole and put them on a grill. Put some olive oil, salt on them, and roast them up. They're also delicious chopped up into a slaw. So I'm going to, if you're going to store them, again, I would put something over the end and put them in a bag, and make sure the tops get in the bag too, because otherwise the tops will get wilty if they are just hanging out by themselves in the refrigerator. So I am going to peel off all of the loose skins and kind of floppy parts. And you can be a little bit aggressive with this when you're pulling the parts off, down off the bottom. You want to get some of those like slimy skins off if you happen to have any. Okay. Again, like with my dill that I chopped up right away, I should use my scallions pretty soon if I'm deciding to chop them, because they will wilt chopped within 3 or 4 days. Okay, and I typically always line up all of my roots together. That way I can get them off with one chop versus having to do each one at a time. And then again, I go in maybe a 1/4 inch or a little bit less pieces down the line. I am not a picky eater, so I will eat the whole thing, put all of it into my slaw. It's also good on top of eggs in the morning. Okay, one more chop through. And for now, again, I'm just going to put these into a bag until I am ready to use them. Scoop them up. Okay. Easy enough. All right, I'll dive into the one that is going to be the most challenging for me on film. So you got the first carrots, spring carrots, out of the hoop houses. And the greens are edible, and they're edible on all of the carrots, but these happen to be ones that were weather shielded because we took care of them in the hoop house. So I've already washed my greens. You can just spray them off or dunk them in some water and shake them out. But I'm going to make carrot top pesto, really basic carrot top pesto. And it tastes a little bit like parsley, so don't be scared of it, and you can add cheese or nuts if you want. You can also keep it really simple. So I'm going to take my greens and chop them down further so they fit. If you have a food processor, that's a really great choice. My food processor is not very large, so I'm going to use an immersion blender to make carrot top pesto. Okay. So, jar or container, something that you can get your immersion blender in. I better see if I can actually fit mine in. Doesn't fit. I'll be right back. Sorry for the interruption. Let's see how this one goes. Yes, we have a winner. Okay, so I'm gonna put my greens. I'm not gonna do all of them. I don't wanna take too much of your time, and you'll get the gist of it, so I'll move the rest of mine off my board. Off to the side for now. Okay, so I even put the bottoms, the stems in. All of it is tasty. And then what I'm going to do is put in about a cup of olive oil, and this changes depending on how many greens you put in. You can also mix in other herbs at the same time. You can put cilantro in or basil or mix parsley with it. Like I said, you can also do cheese. You can just have a little bit of fun with it. So olive oil, and then you can use real lemons, or I'm just going to use lemon juice. And I probably put 1 to 2 tablespoons per cup, but I also like lemon. And then salt to taste. So I'm probably going to start with, I don't know, maybe a teaspoon. Because you can always adjust it as you go. Add more oil, add more greens, add more salt, add more lemon. Okay. And on we go. Let's turn our power up. There we go. Okay, so you usually want to go until you get kind of a smoothie consistency. This one's a little clear. I would probably add more greens to this, but I happen to have made some the other day. So this color is kind of what you're probably going for, and it's quite delicious. And again, this one is just the olive oil, the lemon, the salt, and whatever greens you choose. So try your carrot greens. Okay, as for my carrots, these store really well for a long time whole. So you could just put them in the bag. You've already cut the greens off. Even if you don't want to eat your greens, still cut them off your carrots. Same as the salad turnips. You want your carrots to retain all of their moisture and liquid and delicious crispness. So cut those greens off, whether you use them or not. I feel like carrots kind of speak for themselves. They're great raw, great roasted, lots of different ways. Chopped up and put in slaws, put in stir fries. So I'm putting them in a bag for now and into the fridge. Okay, your broccoli. You can rip off those outer leaves. I know that they talked in the video about the hole that's in the bottom because of temperature fluctuations. If there's not, the bases are usually really good to eat. Just make sure you peel off the hard outer of the stem. So cut the flowerets off the stem. If I was going to eat this, I would chop the bottom off. And then I would take my knife and just cut right around the edges to remove all of the thick skin. Then chop this up. Great to eat raw. Again, put in salads, put in lots of different things. But as soon as you do chop it up, it's not going to hold as long. You can always smell broccoli when it's starting to turn. So make sure you give it the sniff test and eat it before it does that. When you're breaking down your flowerets, I usually begin with just using my hand to get the rest kind of broken apart. Maybe chop off a little more of the stem. And then depending on how you want to eat them, you can choose obviously your size. Me personally, I'm going to chop them a little bit smaller. So I tend to actually just like to use my cutting board and my knife and take them and kind of chop them smaller. Some people are also really good at just breaking them apart with their fingers. So whatever works best for you. Paring knife is also good. But once you break them apart, make sure you put them into a bag and seal that bag. And again, you're going to want to eat your broccoli. And even if you don't chop it up, put it in a bag to store it in your fridge. It'll store longer, again, whole, but if you do decide to chop it, make sure that you eat it within a week once it's chopped. If it starts to smell, it's still fine, but I would cook it at that point. Okay. We have cucumbers. Your cucumbers, 100% leave these not chopped until you're going to eat them so they retain all of their crispness and juiciness. So I'm not going to chop mine up right now, but yeah, keep it whole until you're ready to use it, and they are delicious. Or you can just, take a bite off of it and eat it all the way down. And the last thing that everybody got, which they are blowing up on the farm right now, the strawberries. I recommend you can eat them obviously fresh. They are delicious. If you want to freeze them, wash them, cut the tops off, let them dry, and then line a pan that you can put in the freezer. Make sure they're not touching. That way, once they're frozen, you can take them out, bag them, and then they don't stick to each other. If you just simply cut all the tops off, throw them in a bag, and freeze them, they're gonna clump together. So if you wanna pull out a couple at a time, I recommend doing the process of washing, drying, topping, lining a pan, freezing it, then taking them out, putting them in a bag, and refreezing. So that's an option. They're also great used as desserts. If you put a little sugar on them, you can macerate them and bring out their juices. And we had a chocolate cake yesterday with macerated strawberries on it. So have fun with them. If you're not going to eat them right away, again, we love our bags. Put them in a bag and just kind of loosely cover them and put them into your refrigerator. So I hope that you have a delicious week. Enjoy your food, and I will see you next week.